Hello, everyone. Imagine finishing a long, exhausting night shift at the hospital, stopping to buy a warm meal for the same homeless man you've helped for months, when suddenly he grabs your wrist, looks you straight in the eyes, and says, "Don't go home the way you always do. Take the long way through the town square, walk around the fountain, then go home. Trust me, I'll explain everything tomorrow morning." What would you do? Would you listen? Tonight's story is about the night I chose to listen and how that single decision changed my life forever. If you enjoy heartfelt, suspenseful, real-life stories, please subscribe right now. It means the world to me. And leave a comment telling me which country you're listening from and whether anything like this has ever happened to you. Let's begin. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 28 years old, and I've been a registered nurse at Mercy General Hospital in a quiet suburb just outside Boston for almost 6 years. I work the night shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., because the pay is better and the hospital is calmer after midnight. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment about 1.5 miles from the hospital. Most nights I walk home. It's faster than waiting for the bus, and after 12 hours on my feet, the fresh air helps clear my head. For the past 8 months, there's been an older man who sits on the same bench near the hospital's side entrance. Everyone calls him Mr. Ellis. He's probably in his late 60s, with silver hair that's always a little messy, a gentle face lined with years of hard weather, and the kindest blue eyes I've ever seen. He never begs, he just sits there quietly, sometimes reading an old paperback, sometimes staring at the stars. I started bringing him dinner because the first time I saw him, it was pouring rain and he had no umbrella. I bought him a sandwich and a coffee from the cafeteria. The next night, I did the same. Soon it became a habit. Every evening before I clock out, I pick up a hot meal, soup, a sandwich, sometimes fruit or a cookie, and I bring it to him. We don't talk much. He always says, "Thank you, young lady," in a soft, polite voice, and smiles like I've given him the world. Last Tuesday night started like any other. My shift ended at 7 a.m. I was tired. We had 3 emergencies back to back, including a car accident with 2 injured teenagers. I changed out of my scrubs, grabbed my bag, and stopped at the cafeteria. I bought Mr. Ellis a bowl of chicken noodle soup, a turkey sandwich, an apple, and a bottle of water. He was sitting in his usual spot, coat pulled tight against the morning chill. When he saw me coming, he straightened up and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Ellis," I said, handing him the paper bag. "I got you the soup you like." He accepted it with both hands, the way he always does. "Thank you, Emily. You're too kind to an old man like me." I was about to wish him a good day and start walking when his hand suddenly reached out and gently took hold of my wrist. Not hard, not aggressive, just firm enough to stop me. I froze. His blue eyes locked onto mine with an intensity I'd never seen before. "Emily," he said, his voice low but steady, "listen to me very carefully. Do not walk home your usual way tonight." My heart skipped. What do you mean?" He didn't let go of my wrist. "Your normal route through the alley behind the old bakery on Maple Street, don't take it. Instead, go the long way. Walk through the town square. When you reach the fountain, walk around it once, clockwise, then continue home. Trust me, I'll explain everything tomorrow morning." There was something in his voice, a quiet urgency, that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I wanted to ask a dozen questions, but the look on his face told me now wasn't the time. I swallowed hard. "Okay," I said. "I'll do what you said." He released my wrist, gave me a small nod, and whispered, "Thank you. Now go. Be safe." I walked away feeling unsettled. My usual route was so familiar, past the bakery, through the narrow alley, across the little footbridge, then 2 more blocks to my apartment. It took 12 minutes. The detour through the town square would add at least 20 minutes. I was exhausted. I just wanted to get home, take a shower, and fall into bed. but something in Mr. Ellis's eyes wouldn't let me ignore him. So I turned left instead of right, heading toward the town square. The morning was quiet. A few cars passed. The fountain in the center was shut off for the season, its basin dry and covered with a thin layer of frost. I walked around it once, clockwise, just as he had told me. I felt a little silly, but I did it. Then I continued home. That night, I couldn't sleep well. I kept replaying his words, his grip on my wrist, the serious look in his eyes. Why would he warn me? What did he know that I didn't? The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I had to be back at the hospital by 6:30 for a staff meeting, but first, I wanted answers. I dressed quickly, skipped breakfast, and walked straight back to the hospital. Mr. Ellis wasn't on his bench. I checked the alley behind the bakery. Nothing. I asked the security guard if he'd seen him. He shook his head. Haven't seen the old guy since yesterday morning. My stomach twisted. I was about to give up when I heard two nurses talking near the entrance. Did you hear what happened on Maple Street last night, around 2 o'clock? I stopped walking. The old bakery wall collapsed. Bricks, beams, everything. They think the recent rain weakened the foundation. If anyone had been walking through that alley, they would have been crushed. I felt the blood drain from my face. That was my usual route. If I had walked home the normal way, I wouldn't be here. Little did I know, that was only the beginning. What Mr. Ellis told me the next morning would shake everything I thought I knew about my own life. Part 2. The next morning after the wall collapse, I felt like I was moving through fog. Every step toward the hospital felt heavier than the last. My mind kept replaying Mr. Ellis's words, his hand on my wrist, the quiet certainty in his voice. I had followed his instructions exactly, and now I was alive because of it. But why did he know? How did he know? When I reached the side entrance, his bench was still empty. No coat, no paperback, no trace of him. I stood there for a long minute, scanning the parking lot, the sidewalk, even the bushes near the fence. Nothing. I went inside and asked the security guard again, "Have you seen Mr. Ellis this morning, the older man who sits on the bench?" The guard shook his head. "Not since yesterday. He usually shows up around sunrise. Maybe he found somewhere warmer to stay. It's supposed to drop below freezing tonight." I thanked him and headed to the staff lounge to change. My hands were shaking as I tied my scrubs. I kept thinking about the collapsed wall. Bricks scattered across the alley like broken teeth, metal beams twisted, dust still hanging in the air when the first responders arrived. If I had walked through there at 2 a.m. like I always did, I wouldn't have made it home. During my shift, I couldn't focus. I kept checking the time, waiting for 7 a.m. so I could go back outside and look for him again. Every time the phone rang at the nurse's station, I jumped, half expecting someone to say there had been a fatality in the alley. At 6:45 a.m., I clocked out early, changed quickly, and went straight back to the bench. Still empty. I sat down on the cold metal slats where he usually sat. The wood was worn smooth from years of use. I pulled my coat tighter and waited. 10 minutes passed. 20. Then I saw him. He came from the direction of the old train tracks, moving slowly, leaning on a wooden walking stick I'd never seen before. His coat was the same, but it looked dirtier, like he'd slept outside somewhere rough. When he saw me sitting on his bench, he stopped. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, the same gentle smile, and walked the rest of the way over. "Emily," he said softly, "you listened." I stood up. My voice came out sharper than I intended. "You told me not to walk my usual way. You knew something was going to happen. How did you know?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he lowered himself onto the bench with a small groan and patted the spot next to him. I sat, not because I wanted to be polite, because I needed answers. Mr. Ellis looked straight ahead, toward the hospital entrance. "I've been watching that alley for years," he began. "I notice things. Cracks in the brick, water pooling in strange places after rain, the way the foundation shifts when heavy trucks go by on Maple Street. Last week, I saw a new crack, long, deep, running up the side of the old bakery wall. I knew it wouldn't hold much longer. I stared at him. You could have told the city or the building inspector. I did, he said quietly. 3 times. Called the non-emergency line, left messages. No one came. Old buildings in this part of town, people don't listen to men who sit on benches. I felt a pang of guilt. I'm sorry. He waved it off. Not your fault, but when I saw you walking that alley every night, I started worrying. You're young. You have a whole life ahead. I couldn't just sit and watch. So you waited until last night to warn me? He nodded. The rain on Monday made it worse. I could hear the bricks groaning when the wind blew. I knew it would happen soon. I just didn't know exactly when. I looked down at my hands. They were still shaking a little. You saved my life, Mr. Ellis. He turned to me then, really looked at me. You saved mine first. Every meal, every kind word. You made me feel human again when most people just walk past. We sat in silence for a minute. The morning traffic was starting to pick up. Nurses and doctors hurried in and out of the doors. I finally asked the question that had been burning since yesterday. Why do you stay out here? You seem educated, like you've had a different life before this. He gave a small, sad smile. I did. I was a structural engineer, worked on bridges, high-rises, old restorations. 32 years. Then my wife got sick, cancer. We spent everything we had on treatments. After she passed, I couldn't keep up with the mortgage. Lost the house, lost most of my savings, and somewhere along the way, I lost the will to start over. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. Being out here, he continued, you see things, patterns, people's habits. You learn who's kind and who isn't. You learn who needs help and who pretends they don't. And sometimes you get the chance to repay a kindness. I swallowed. What happens now? Now? He looked towards the alley. The city will finally inspect that wall. They'll blame weather. They'll fix it. Life will go back to normal. And you? He shrugged. Same bench, same routine. Unless the cold gets too bad. Then maybe the shelter on Carver Street? I shook my head. No, that's not happening. He raised an eyebrow. I'm not letting you freeze out here. I have a spare room. It's small, but it's warm. There's a bathroom, a hot shower, a real bed. He stared at me like I spoke another language. I'm serious, I told him. You saved my life. The least I can do is give you a safe place until you get back on your feet. Mr. Ellis looked down at his hands. They were rough, scarred from years of work. Emily, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Why not? Because people talk. A young nurse taking in a homeless man, they'll say things, assume things. Let them. I know who you are. I know what you did for me. That's all that matters. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. I haven't slept in a real bed in almost 4 years. I felt tears prick my eyes. Then it's time you did. He looked at me again, really looked at me, and this time there was something different in his eyes, not just gratitude, something deeper, like hope. Okay, he said at last, but only until I can stand on my own again. I smiled. Deal. I helped him up from the bench. He was taller than I realized, even with the slight stoop. We started walking towards my apartment, slowly because his knees weren't what they used to be. As we passed the collapsed alley, police tape fluttered in the wind. A crew in hard hats was already measuring the damage. Mr. Ellis paused and looked at the rubble. Funny thing about old walls, he said quietly. Sometimes they hold for decades. Sometimes they fall in one night. But when they do fall, they take everything in their path. I glanced at him. You think there's more to this than just a bad foundation? He didn't answer right away, just kept walking. But the way he said it, The careful way he chose his words made me realize something. He hadn't told me everything yet, and whatever he was holding back, it was bigger than a crumbling wall. We walked the mile and a half to my apartment in almost complete silence. Mr. Ellis moved slowly, leaning on his stick, and I matched his pace without thinking about it. The morning air was sharp, the kind of cold that makes your cheeks sting, but I barely felt it. My mind was racing. Every few steps I glanced at him, at the lines on his face, the careful way he placed each foot, the way he kept his eyes on the sidewalk like he was counting cracks. He looked smaller out here than on his bench, almost fragile. But there was still something solid about him, something that had seen a lot and survived. When we reached my building, a 3-story brick walk-up with chipped green paint on the door, I held it open for him. "Second floor," I said. "No elevator, sorry." He gave a small chuckle. "I've climbed worse." The stairs were narrow. I went first, carrying his small canvas bag that held everything he owned. He followed, one careful step at a time, gripping the rail. When we reached my door, number 204, I unlocked it and stepped aside. "Welcome home," I said, trying to sound light. He paused on the threshold, looking in like he was entering a church. The apartment was modest. 1 bedroom, open kitchen living room, a tiny balcony that overlooked the parking lot. I kept it clean. Hospital habits die hard. The couch was secondhand, but comfortable. The rug was soft gray, and there were a few plants on the windowsill that somehow hadn't died yet. Mr. Ellis stepped inside slowly. His eyes moved over everything. The bookshelf with nursing textbooks and a few novels, the framed photo of me and my mom at my graduation, the little table with 2 chairs. "It's warm," he said quietly. I smiled. "There's heat and hot water. First things first. Shower?" He nodded, almost shy. I showed him the bathroom. Fresh towels, a new bar of soap, an extra toothbrush I kept for guests. I dug out an old sweatshirt and sweatpants from the back of my closet. They'd belonged to an ex who never came back for them. They were clean, folded, waiting. "These might be a little big," I said, handing them over, "but they're better than what you've got on." He took them with both hands. "Thank you, Emily." I left him to it and went to the kitchen. I put on coffee, scrambled some eggs, toasted bread. Simple things. Comfort things. When he came out 20 minutes later, he looked like a different person. Hair damp and combed back, face freshly shaved, he'd found my spare razor. The sweatshirt hung loose on him, but he stood a little straighter. The dirt and exhaustion were gone from his eyes. He looked human, not just the homeless man on the bench. A man. Someone's father, maybe. Someone's husband once. He sat at the small table. I put the plate in front of him. He stared at it for a long moment. "I haven't had eggs cooked like this I don't remember," he said. "Eat," I told him. "We'll talk after." He ate slowly, carefully, like it was afraid it would disappear. I sipped coffee across from him and watched. When the plate was clean, he pushed it away and looked at me. "You want to know the rest," he said. Not a question. I nodded. He took a deep breath. "That wall," he began, "wasn't just falling apart because of rain and time. Someone helped it along." I felt the coffee cup go cold in my hands. "What do you mean?" "I used to walk past that bakery every night after you left. Sometimes I'd sit in the alley when it was quiet. One night, about 3 weeks ago, I saw 2 men, young, hoodies. One had a sledgehammer, the other had a crowbar. They weren't breaking in, they were breaking the wall from the inside, deliberately weakening the support beams." My mouth went dry. Why? That's what I've been trying to figure out. I watched them for almost an hour. They worked quietly, no talking, just methodical destruction. When they finished, they covered the damage with some loose bricks so it wouldn't be obvious right away. Did you see their faces? Not clearly, too dark, but one of them had a tattoo on his neck, a small black snake curled around a dagger. The other was taller, skinny, kept looking at his phone like he was checking the time. I leaned forward. Did you tell anyone? I tried, called the police non-emergency line twice, said I saw suspicious activity near the old bakery. They took a report, never followed up. I even went to the station in person last week. The desk sergeant told me, we'll look into it, and handed me a pamphlet about hypothermia safety. He shook his head. No one listens to a man who lives on the street. I felt anger rising, not at him, but at the system, at how easy it is to ignore someone like him. So you warned me, I said. I warned you because I knew you'd walk through there, and I knew if that wall came down on you, it wouldn't look like an accident to me. The room felt smaller suddenly. You think someone wanted to hurt me? I asked. He met my eyes. I think it wanted to hurt someone who walks that alley at 2 a.m, and you're the only one who does. I felt my pulse in my throat. But why me? I don't have enemies. I don't owe anyone money. I live a quiet life. Mr. Ellis was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made the floor drop out from under me. I think it has to do with your mother. My mother had passed away 2 years ago. Breast cancer. Quick and cruel. I was with her at the end. We were close. Very close. She worked as a bookkeeper for a small construction company downtown. Nothing glamorous, just steady work. I stared at him. My mother? She's been gone for 2 years. How could this have anything to do with her? He reached into his coat pocket, the same coat he'd worn every day, and pulled out a folded piece of paper, old, worn at the edges. He slid it across the table. It was a copy of a newspaper article from 3 years ago. Headline, Local Construction Firm Under Investigation for Safety Violations. The company was Harlan Builders, the same company my mother had worked for. The article mentioned falsified inspection reports, ignored structural warnings, and a near collapse at a downtown parking garage that had been quietly repaired overnight. My mother's name was in the article, listed as one of the accountants who had flagged irregularities in the books. She had reported suspicious payments to an offshore account. Internal audit was opened, then 3 months later, the investigation was quietly dropped. No charges, no explanation. I looked up at Mr. Ellis. I found this in a dumpster behind the courthouse. Someone had thrown out a whole box of old case files. I kept this one because your last name was on it. He paused. Then I started noticing things. A black SUV that would park across from the hospital some nights. The same one, same license plate. Partial, but I memorized it. The same 2 men watching the side entrance. Not every night, but often enough. My hands were ice. And last month, he continued, I overheard them. They were standing near the bench thinking no one was listening. One said, "She's the daughter. Same route every night. If the wall goes, it looks like bad luck. No one will dig deeper." I couldn't breathe. They were talking about me. Mr. Ellis nodded slowly. I believe someone wants the past to stay buried, and you're the last loose end.
Part 4. I sat frozen at the kitchen table, the photocopied newspaper article trembling slightly between my fingers. The black and white photo showed the old parking garage downtown, the one my mother had mentioned in passing during her last months. She'd said something about structural concerns once, but I thought she was just stressed from work. I never imagined it was this serious. Mr. Ellis watched me carefully, giving me time to process. My mother, she flagged payments, I said, almost to myself. Offshore accounts. And then the investigation just disappeared. He nodded. Cases like that don't vanish by accident. Someone with influence made sure it did, and your mother was the one who started asking questions. I looked up at him. You think someone killed her? The words felt heavy coming out of my mouth. I had always accepted the official story. Aggressive cancer, discovered too late. The doctor said it had spread quickly. She was gone in 6 months. But now... Mr. Ellis shook his head slowly. I don't know for certain, but I do know this. People who threaten big money don't usually die of natural causes when it's convenient for someone else. My stomach twisted. He continued, voice low. After she passed, I started paying more attention. I saw that black SUV again, same one, parked near the hospital on the anniversary of her death. 2 men inside. They didn't get out, just watched, then left. I pressed my palms against the table to steady myself. Why now? Why wait 2 years? Because you started walking the route your mother used to take from work. Same alley, same time of night. And someone noticed. I remembered now. Mom had worked late shifts at the office sometimes. She'd walk through that alley to catch the late bus. I teased her about it once. Mom, that's creepy at night. She'd laughed and said, I've done it for 20 years. Nothing ever happens. Nothing. Until it did. I looked at Mr. Ellis. You've been protecting me this whole time? Not protecting, he corrected gently. Watching. Waiting for the right moment to speak. I didn't want to scare you. I hoped I was wrong. But when I saw them tampering with that wall, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Silence settled between us. Then I asked the question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Who are they? Mr. Ellis sighed. I don't have names, but I have a theory. Harlan Builders was bought out 18 months ago by a larger firm, Crestwood Construction. Big money, national contracts, the kind of company that can't afford old scandals coming back to life. And if I started asking questions, you might find records, emails, bank transfers, things your mother documented that were never destroyed. I stood up suddenly. My legs felt unsteady. I need to see those records, I said. Mr. Ellis looked at me with something close to alarm. Emily, that's dangerous. I know, but if someone tried to kill me, or at least make it look like an accident, they're not going to stop just because the wall fell on the wrong night. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. There's a storage unit. Your mother rented it under a different name, her maiden name, I believe. She told me once in passing when she brought me coffee on a cold morning, said it was her insurance policy. My heart pounded. You knew my mother? Not well, he said. She stopped by the bench sometimes, not every day, but enough that we talked. She was kind, like you. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. She never mentioned a storage unit to me. She probably didn't want to worry you. I wiped my face quickly. Where is it? Old Industrial Park off Route 9, Unit 47. The combination is her birthday, backward, month, day, year. I stared at him. You remembered that? I remember everything people tell me when they're kind enough to talk to me. We sat in silence again. Then I made a decision. I'm going tonight. Mr. Ellis shook his head. Too risky. They might be watching your movements now that the wall failed. Then we go together, I said. He looked surprised. You've already risked your life for me, I told him. The least I can do is not let you face this alone either. He studied my face for a long time. Finally, he gave a small, tired smile. You're stubborn, just like your mother. We waited until after midnight. I changed into dark clothes, hoodie, jeans, sneakers. Mr. Ellis borrowed my spare winter coat. It was a little small on him, but it would do. We took a cab to the edge of the industrial park. I didn't want my car on camera there. Then we walked the last half mile through quiet, dimly lit streets. The storage facility was old. Chain-link fence, flickering security lights, a single camera over the gate that looked like it hadn't worked in years. We slipped through a gap in the fence Mr. Ellis knew about. Unit 47 was at the far end. My hands shook as I spun the combination lock. Month, day, year. Backward. The lock clicked. I pulled the door up slowly. Inside, boxes. Dozens of them, labeled in my mother's neat handwriting. Bank statements, emails printed out, photos of documents. a small external hard drive taped to the inside lid of one box, and a handwritten letter addressed to me. I opened it with trembling fingers. Emily, my sweet girl, if you're reading this, something happened to me that wasn't an accident. Everything you need is here. Trust your instincts. You're stronger than you know. And remember, kindness always comes back, even when the world tries to make you forget. I love you forever. Mom. Tears fell onto the paper before I could stop them. Mr. Ellis placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. We need to take this and leave. Now, he whispered. I nodded. We loaded the most important boxes into 2 backpacks, the hard drive, the key documents, the letter. And as we turned to go, headlights swept across the far end of the lot, a black SUV. Same one. They were here.
Part 5. Headlights cut through the darkness like knives. The black SUV rolled slowly along the access road of the storage facility, engine low and menacing. Mr. Ellis and I pressed ourselves against the cold metal wall of Unit 47, barely breathing. The vehicle stopped about 30 yards away. Doors opened. 2 men stepped out, the same silhouettes I'd seen in my nightmares since Mr. Ellis first described them. Hoodies up, faces shattered. One held a flashlight, the other something longer, maybe a tool, maybe worse. Mr. Ellis whispered, so quiet it was almost nothing. Back door, now. We slipped inside the unit again, pulling the rolling door down just enough to leave a crack for air. The space was pitch black, except for the faint glow from my phone screen, which I kept covered with my hand. Outside, footsteps crunched on gravel. Voices. Low. Clipped. Unit 47. That's the one she rented under the mother's name. How do you know she's been here? She hasn't shown up at the apartment tonight. Car's still there. If she's digging, this is where she'd come. My heart hammered so hard, I thought they could hear it through the metal. Mr. Ellis touched my arm lightly. Stay calm. They don't know we're inside yet. The footsteps got closer. One of them rattled the lock on our unit. Combination's been used recently. Someone's been here. The other man laughed, short, ugly sound. Then we take everything, burn what we don't need, no loose ends. I clutched the backpack tighter. Inside it, the hard drive, the documents, my mother's letter. Everything that could prove Harlan Builders, now Crestwood, had covered up safety violations, falsified records, and possibly worse. Everything that could explain why my mother died when she did. Mr. Ellis moved silently to the back corner of the unit. There was a small ventilation grate near the floor. Old, rusted, barely big enough for a person. He pried at it with his walking stick until it gave way with a soft scrape. Through here, he breathed. It leads to the maintenance crawl space under the next row. We can get out the far side. I hesitated. The space looked impossibly tight. But the men were already working on the lock outside. I nodded. Mr. Ellis went first, surprisingly agile for his age. He slid through on his belly, then reached back to help me. The metal edges scraped my arms and hips, but I pushed through, dragging the backpack behind me. We crawled through damp, dusty darkness for what felt like forever, maybe 30 yards. Finally, another grate. Mr. Ellis kicked it open gently. We emerged behind the next row of units, hidden in shadow. The SUV was still idling near our unit. The men were inside now. I could see flashlight beams moving through the open door. We didn't wait. We ran, or rather, I ran and half-carried Mr. Ellis, toward the gap in the fence where we'd entered. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but we made it. Once on the main road, I flagged down the first cab that passed. We slid into the back seat, breathing hard. Police station, I told the driver. The one on Central Avenue. Fast. Mr. Ellis leaned back, eyes closed. You did good, Emily. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had nothing, who had lost everything, had risked what little he had left for me. At the police station, we asked for Detective Morales. I'd met her once when I reported a stolen bike 2 years ago. She was tough, fair, no nonsense.
She met us in a small interview room. I placed the backpack on the table and opened it. These are my mother's records. She worked for Harlan Builders. She flagged financial irregularities and safety violations. I believe someone tried to make sure those records never saw the light of day and that I never asked questions. I told her everything. The wall collapse, Mr. Ellis's warning, the men at the storage unit tonight, the black SUV. Detective Morales listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at Mr. Ellis. "You're the witness who called in the suspicious activity at the bakery." He nodded. "Multiple times." She sighed. "We have the report. It got buried. I'm sorry." Then she turned to me. "This is enough to open an investigation. The hard drive, the documents, your mother's letter, we'll take it all into evidence. We'll subpoena the original records from Crestwood. If there's anything criminal, fraud, conspiracy, tampering, we'll find it." She looked between us. "You two need protection tonight. We'll put you in a safe hotel, officers outside." I glanced at Mr. Ellis. He gave a small nod. We spent the next 3 days in that hotel room. Small, clean, anonymous. Police came and went, detectives asked questions, forensics took the hard drive. I gave statement after statement. On the 4th day, Detective Morales knocked. She looked tired, but satisfied. "We got them," she said. "The 2 men from the SUV, arrested last night trying to leave the state. One of them had the tattoo you described, snake and dagger on the neck. They're talking. Already named their supervisor at Crestwood. Turns out the company knew about the safety issues for years. They paid off inspectors. Your mother found the transfers. When she reported it internally, they decided she was a problem." I felt the room tilt. "And her death?" Morales hesitated. "We're reopening the case. The medical examiner is reviewing records again. There are inconsistencies in the timeline of her treatment. We may never prove murder, but we can prove negligence, cover-up, and conspiracy to intimidate witnesses. That includes attempted harm to you." I closed my eyes. Mr. Ellis reached over and squeezed my hand. 3 months later, the indictments came down. Crestwood Construction faced massive fines. Several executives were charged with fraud, conspiracy, and witness tampering. The 2 men from the SUV took plea deals. One got 7 years, the other 12. My mother's name was cleared publicly. A small article in the local paper called her a whistleblower who tried to do the right thing. I kept her letter in a frame on my nightstand. And Mr. Ellis? He never went back to the bench. I helped him apply for veterans benefits. Turns out he'd served in the Army before becoming an engineer. Between that, Social Security, and a small settlement from the city for the years they ignored his reports, he had enough. We found him a 1-bedroom apartment 2 blocks from the hospital, ground floor, no stairs. I visit every Sunday with coffee and eggs. Sometimes we sit on his small balcony and watch the sunset. He still reads paperbacks, still has the same gentle smile. And every once in a while, when the conversation gets quiet, he'll look at me and say, "You know, Emily, kindness always comes back." I believe him now, because the night I chose to trust a stranger on a bench, it came back in the form of a life saved. Mine. And, maybe, just maybe, my mother's truth finally heard. Thank you for listening to the whole story. If it moved you, if it reminded you to notice the quiet people around you, please subscribe, leave a comment with your country, and tell me, has a small act of kindness changed your life? Take care out there, and always listen to that small, quiet voice when it tells you to take a different path. You never know who might be watching out for you.